How's it going, guys? My name is Tim. I'm a photographer out here in the Pacific Northwest, and in this video I'm gonna go more in depth about the iKAMPER BDV. If you haven't seen my last video, I went over my whole entire Forerunner build, and arguably the most questions I get asked is how do I like the iKAMPER BDV. I'll link that video above if you haven't seen it. In this video I'm gonna go over what I like about it, what I don't like about it. Okay, so I'll start off by saying iKAMPER makes really great products. The BDV isn't the only iKAMPER product I own. I also own the Disco series, and it's made cooking a lot more enjoyable. It's definitely on the pricier side, but I think it's worth the cost of it. I do feel like within the last couple of years, the rooftop tent market has grown quite a bit. A lot of companies are now making their own rooftop tents, and they're adding their own uniqueness to their tents to make it stand out. Why am I saying all this? It's because if you're in the market for a rooftop tent, there is a lot of companies to choose from. I bought the BDV when they first launched. That was back in 2022. I think I was one of the first people here in Washington to have the BDV, or at the very least buy it in store. That means that I've used it throughout winter, I've used it throughout summer, and in fact, if you saw the last video, I lived out my Forerunner in the entire summer of 2023. I got to use the BDV quite a bit, but yeah, so here is what I like about it and here's what I don't like about it. Let's start off by the material of the tent. I'll read off what they have on their site and I'll tell you what that means in a real life scenario. The material of the outer shell is made of aluminum and is a scratch resistant / UV resistant. The tent fabric itself is a 300 GSM polycotton canvas. The rainfly is a waterproof with an eco-friendly water repellent coating. What does that mean in a real life scenario? It means that it's a 4-season tent and that it repels water. If it's dumping rain outside, you're gonna stay really dry. The second pro that I like about this tent is more of an opinion, but it is a good looking tent. So the BDV aesthetically, I think is a good looking tent in compared to the other tents out there on the market currently. There could be somebody else that comes out with a better looking tent down the road. But like I said, this is kind of a personal opinion. I just like the aesthetics of the BDV. Number 3 is how modular it is. So the iKAMPER in itself, quite apparent that iKAMPER is building their own ecosystem, and while building their own ecosystem, they're building a lot of accessories and stuff that add to their existing product. And I think the BDV is the first one to go through this kind of cycle where you buy the tent and then a bunch of accessories come out for it. That's actually one of the reasons why I went with the BDV, was their announcement to continue to support this product with a bunch of accessories. So for an example, they've come out with this already. You can add additional crossbars to the roof and solar panels. You can add an annex to it, and I think it's the first wedge style tent where you can actually add an annex to it. Number 4 is the price. This actually would have been a con about a year ago, but they dropped their retail price from, I believe, $3,700 all the way down to $2,800. It gets a lot cheaper than that if you buy it disassembled and build it out yourself. This is one of the first, I think is the first tent that you can build yourself. You can buy all the parts for it and they just send it to you. You get a discount for it. It gets even cheaper than that if you buy the BDV solo, buy it deassembled. So if you were gonna do the BDV solo, I think it starts at like $2,100 and it just goes up from there. But I don't think you'd be paying any more than $3,200 at most. That includes shipping and I think tax. So yeah, the price, it's a good tent for its price. Yeah, so let's talk about some of the cons, what I don't like about it. And I feel like this is why people click on this video, is that it's a huge investment. Tents are a huge investment. Rooftop tents are a huge investment. And so spending thousands of dollars, you want something to work and you want it to last quite a while. These are the cons I have about the BDV that maybe they can improve on the 2.0 version. One of the main cons I have about this tent is the aluminum shell. And I know I said the material is a pro in the first segment of it, but let me explain. So the shell material is great. It will hold up against weather and tree branches and like rocks if you're ever in that situation where rocks are falling on you. But the wear and tear I'm talking about is opening and closing the tent. It's the strap that's connected to the back of the shell, and I noticed that when you close it, you pull against the aluminum shell, and what I'm noticing that it's starting to crack a little bit. This may not be specific to the BDV. I know a lot of tents have a strap that's connected to the front in this particular way, so I guess rule of thumb when you're looking for a rooftop tent, just kind of make sure that if there is a strap for you to pull down your wedge style tent like this, check if it pulls against the frame or not. You'll start to notice over time that there may be some wear and tear that goes on. I also noticed that on the side of the tents, if you don't put all the fabric inside the tent when you're closing it and you leave it out in the open, the BDV comes with a bunch of cords that strap the fabric into the shell. If any of those are left out or exposed and you close the tent on top of it, you can potentially crack those as well. That's actually what I've done, and I did that pretty early on. I mean, when getting a tent, I think this is like my 5th time closing it, and I kind of noticed that it cracked a little bit. That's kind of my fault. I wasn't really being aware when I was closing it. Number 2, one of the other cons that I have about this is storage in general and storage with bedding inside the tent. So let's start with the general storage. You only have 2 pockets on the side to store things, which isn't so much of a big deal since you normally wouldn't be bringing a ton of things inside the tent anyways. At least in my opinion, you wouldn't. But it would be nice to have storage along the roof of the tent, like a mesh pockets. A lot of other tents nowadays are now doing this. They have like iPad holders or tablet holders that's mesh that you can use or put things along the roof. So as for bedding, this is a little nitpicky, but you can't store a whole lot of bedding inside. I've gotten away with storing a small blanket and a pillow inside of the tent and it closed just fine. I know some people that want to store a lot of things up there, a lot of bedding, so they don't have to keep it inside of their vehicle. And you potentially could do that in the BDV, but it's going to be a tight fit when you're closing the tent. In general though, I don't really store bedding in my tent. I have it in the car with me and throw it up in the tent when I need to get up there. So this doesn't really concern me as much. I know a lot of people like to have bedding inside their vehicle or stored up inside the tent. So number 3 is lighting. A lot of tents now are integrating lighting in their tents. For the price of the BDV, it would be great to have this come stock. It's not really a huge deal since I have an external light that I keep with me, or I run an LED strip inside the tent, and that costs I think like $30. This LED strip that I bought, you can change the brightness of the light, you can change it to all different colors. It's RGB. And it's probably similar to what other companies are doing when they implement lighting inside of the tent anyways. So I don't really mind this at all, but it is nice to have it come stock. All right, so there are some things to know about the BDV that's I don't think is either a pro or con. One of them is standing on a tent. I know some rooftop tents out there you can stand on. You may be able to get away with that in the BDV, but I personally wouldn't do it. Unless you stand on the crossbars of it, but you're limited with your footing. So the tent is single channeled as opposed to a dual channel or a double channel tent. If you don't know what that is, I think the CVT mount hood is a perfect example. What it really means is that you can store more bedding inside the tent that's just a little taller. The channels are T-slotted, so you can mount other stuff to it. The first thing that comes to mind are like traction boards, shovels, mainly an awning. If I were to get an awning, I would need to have a special bracket. I think they're called like HD awning brackets. Basically, it's just an L-shaped bracket that goes underneath your roof rack or your tent, and it just extends a little longer. So I mentioned this a little earlier, but I'll be upgrading from the stock 2.75 inch mattress. So I tend to sleep on my side, so I don't find it as comfortable. However, if I'm camping over the weekend, I really don't mind it at all. So the screen window is on the outside and the canvas window is on the inside. It's a nice touch and a nice feature that's been, I think, thought out. I can't speak for other tents if they do this, but I do know it's a nice thing to have. Opening the canvas window while the bug screen window is still zipped up is a thoughtful design. That wraps up the pros and cons that I have about the BDV. I hope this helps you guys, just in case you guys are looking for the iKAMPER or looking to purchase the iKAMPER BDV, or just in general any other tents. Overall, I like the tent. I generally like to be very minimalistic and like to keep my gear list fairly low. So having a low profile, lightweight, and a modular tent is something that really sold me on the BDV. It's functional, and if I take care of it, I'm sure it'll last me for quite some time just based on my experience. I mentioned quite a bit about how I use my gear along my trips, so in my next video I kind of want to bring you guys along with me in my photography trips and kind of explore all the unique landscapes of the PNW. But yeah, so stay tuned for that. All right, thanks guys.